There's two.
I apologize for the rude, what appears to be rudeness.
I don't want to report Scott. I want to promote Scott. Oh my God.
Oh, that's one way.
It's saying
Karen.
report. Okay, hold on. Scott, if you can hear us, I'm working on it.
Mary. Hello.
Still trying to connect to YouTube.
Come here.
You sure?
Scott's remote.
I know. Yeah, he texted me.
Can you hear me?
Oh, you're running the meeting, you should see. There he is.
Scott, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Roger, can
Does
you
it- does it
turn
actually
Scott up a
matter
little
where
bit,
the-
please?
Of course not.
Sit there, but. Want to sit with you. Okay.
Thank you.
Girls sit.
I am having trouble, Scott, just so you know, connecting to YouTube. I'm gonna keep trying, but we do have a quorum. So welcome to start when you are ready. Maybe we'll let Mary sit down first. There you go. I'm not trying to rush you.
Down this bag, which I need to do. It's got too much stuff in it. Let's see, I'm struggling for it.
Will we hear him call the meeting to order?
I can call it to
Do
order.
you want to just run it then from there so that you don't have to worry about any issues me being remote?
Would you like the vice chair to run the meeting from here, Scott?
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay. Is that you, Mary?
I'm in charge of vice.
You're in charge of vice? Then you are up, madam.
Do you know how to recite it from memory?
Your image and voice may be subject to recording. This is an open meeting law,
That is
That's good enough.
correct.
meeting.
Are you calling the meeting to order?
I'm calling the meeting to order at
7:33.
7:33. How's that?
Excellent. And it appears we are finally live streaming. So we are on
We're
YouTube
good.
and
So everything is
everything is
happening on,
good to go.
and I need to pull up our agenda.
Transfer request.
Yeah, Jen, it's gonna be pretty simple. Just approve
June
the
has transfer
minutes.
requests for
Yes,
us.
June has transfer request.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
approve the
My
minutes
town
and
government has the agenda.
You have to do the
Yeah.
approval of the minutes.
Roger, could you turn Scott up a little bit more, please? Thank you. Scott, sorry, we couldn't hear you there.
I'll just say, Jen is simple, just prove the meeting minutes from town meeting. And then, of course, the line item transfer, those will be the first two items.
You have the minutes from, we didn't do the minutes from May 6th.
From the town meeting.
From the
Yeah.
town.
Oh,
meeting.
that's
Yes.
right, still May. Yeah,
Mhm.
You did receive them.
I did receive them.
And nobody objected or sent edits.
Okay.
I read them. They're fine.
So town meeting was May
Sixth.
6th. That was the correct date. Okay.
I'll
I,
you better make the motion.
you want me to make the motion? I make a motion to approve the finance committee minutes from the May 6th meeting.
Second that. Oh.
Okay.
Any discussion? I kept forgetting I
Yeah.
gotta do this thing. Any discussion about the minutes?
No.
Not hearing that.
We're good.
Roll call, Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, I.
Scott, I.
This is,
Scott,
Scott, I.
Yep.
Sorry, Scott, I'll try. You're like, you're like God, you're up there in the sky. Your voice comes out of the ceiling somehow.
The voice from, it's like the Wizard of Oz.
It is like Wizard of Oz, yes. Okay, what do we have next? Review and act on any transfer requests. So June's got some stuff.
Is there any particular
Yeah.
order we need to
Transfer
go in, you
requests.
think?
I say whatever you have, let's go with the order you have.
June, I think you've sent these out to us.
Actually, you have not seen these yet, and I apologize for that. There was a couple of them that came through today that I didn't have a chance to send out to you. So the first one that we have, I don't know if this one was sent out to them or not, for the public building expense line item. He has, you did this really well at the selectmen's meeting.
Did I?
You did.
I don't do it as well as you do, June, but thank
Public
you.
buildings, won't have anyone looked at them. So public building would like to request $8,000 from the snow and ice part-time payroll to cover additional expenses that he has, and it looks like he has the remaining expenses of Mars Cleaning, Marlboro Pest Control, Whitewater, which is the water testing, WB Mason, Otis Elevator, and AT&T Mobility. So this is, he didn't write on here.
I think down here, he put the reason why, he's short.
Is, what did he do? It doesn't really say. There was extra work that was needed because of a backflow prevention devices and service work needed on the generator at 1870 and also here at 23 Linden Street. The fire pump and sprinkler tests still need to be performed here at 23 Linden as well. Oh, there was another sheet he had somewhere of expenses that he's actually had extra expenses than what he had budgeted for.
So these are unanticipated expenses?
Correct.
As
The
a
ones that
result-
are listed are expected, but he had too many repairs that he had actually budgeted for previously in the budget. So he's asking to transfer $8,000 from the snow and ice part-time wages, which currently has $9,500 in it and some change, into the public safety, public buildings expense line item.
And we're lucky to be able to do that, given that we didn't have an
Didn't have
overly
a
snowy
hefty winter.
So we do have that additional or extra funding in that line item to be able to do that. And I always say that our town buildings are the most difficult buildings to budget. We are working on coming up with long-term maintenance and preventative maintenance, but as we've discussed here, that always takes funding in order to be able to do. And we are catching up on some years of deferred maintenance. And so there are things that as we get into our cycle of doing our annual testing and inspections, there are things that are older that have issues that come up and they just go, unfortunately, and we have to address them. We do have all older buildings. Even this building is, the new part is 26 years old now. So that's when things, start going.
Kristen, remind me, we had 50,000 on the warrant in the budget this year for maintenance. Didn't we put?
For the
money in?
FY 26, we.
For the next year.
Yep, for next
Next
fiscal
year,
year,
yeah.
we did a maintenance line item. Actually, we made it broader for buildings, vehicles, and equipment.
Oh,
So that way, those unanticipated expenses can be covered out of there without exactly what you're seeing here happening.
snows.
Because if it,
Mm.
right, if it snows a lot, or if,
Yeah.
there's more people on health insurance, we may not have any, internal funding at the end of the year that we can use to cover some of these costs, especially because we scaled the budget back so significantly for FY 26.
And these would be annual expenses. They do this every year.
These were unanticipated break, like basically the generator wasn't working. They had to call someone in to service it. But I guess what I more meant is we're now getting on those annual servicing schedules. So that way, hopefully, we will limit the number of repairs that are unanticipated in the future. But we are also limited by our budget in terms of how much we can do for annual maintenance and replacement. We tend to let things go longer for replacement than recommended because of budgetary constraints.
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if we had a couple of the doors in the bays.
Yes,
that-
the fire station bay doors were the other issues that kept breaking.
Yeah.
But now we're gonna replace those through the capital plan that was approved
Yeah,
at town
right.
meeting.
And June, you'll be sending us a copy. of these,
Absolutely,
so I can
yes.
get the minutes out.
Absolutely.
So, any other discussion on the?
So these type of things that are listed in here, though, just to see if I'm hearing it right, have been kind of accounted for in a way in the fiscal year 2026 budget as possible anticipated expenses.
To the extent that anything that's like an annual service or something like that, Fred has mapped all of that out. now
Okay.
that he's doing facilities. And he's doing a great job, unfortunately, because things haven't always been, maybe updated as often as they need to, or haven't maybe historically been on service maintenance schedules. There are unanticipated repairs that come through. So we are working to be more proactive within the constraints of our budget to address things that need to be annually serviced and things of that nature. So
Mhm.
if those are discussions that Fred and I always have when we sit there and try to pin down the number for that repair budget, and public buildings budget, because it's not easy to.
Yeah, usually he's pretty good, and I think,
He is.
we used to have a larger, I don't want to say but an
Budget.
accounting, a budget for the repairs that we did have, and then when COVID hit, everything got put on hold. And then I want to say the year before last, we had done a separate $10,000 line in the budget
Yes,
to
and that
help
ended up
bring it
getting
back.
absorbed into
Yeah.
the repairs that happened to be needed on an annual basis. So that it was getting a little bit challenging for Fred to track repairs separately because he had some repairs that were within the budget, some that had their own line items. So we moved that 10 back into his budget for those repairs.
Most of the ones I think that are on that list right now are not unforeseen. Those there are just what he needs to cover for the rest of this year. And he's not gonna have enough money in the budget because of some of the repairs that he's had to pay out already, that were over and above what he had originally budgeted for.
I applaud the plan to properly maintain the buildings.
We're
They're a
trying.
huge investment for the community,
Yep.
and we do need to take care of them. And I know from having been on the school committee for 6 years, that, it's sometimes easier to defer maintenance if you want to save a buck. But it's
Not in the long run.
not wise because it's more expensive.
More expensive.
Absolutely. I always say it's easier to fix a hole than having to replace the whole thing 3 years later. So
So I'll make the motion to approve.
And I'll second it.
I'll have to read it. Wait a second. $8,000 be transferred from snow and ice part-time payroll to public building expense.
Yep,
got it.
that is it, sir.
Is any other discussion?
We need a second.
I seconded.
I'm sorry.
And you
Well,
do
yeah.
need a roll call vote because you have one
Yes,
member
I'm,
online.
I'm about to,
I'm sorry, I didn't.
that's all right. I'm in training, so
You are you have the vice.
I do. Second thing you hold, right? All right, roll call vote on that. Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
The 5.
Scott, I.
And Scott was an I,
Yes.
Yeah.
an I from the sky.
It's actually sounding like it's coming from the hallway.
It does.
Yeah,
It's
it does.
very
It
loud.
does sound like it's coming from the hallway.
That general direction.
It's
Okay.
coming from Burlington, so it's a long ways away.
Oh, no.
I didn't catch.
Roger,
We didn't catch that, Scott.
Roger,
I said,
can't.
I said it's
not
coming,
going.
it's coming from Burlington, so it's a long ways away.
Oh,
It's, he sounds
in
like
the
he's
office still.
underwater here.
oh, he's coming from Burlington. Are you in the car, Scott?
No, I'm in the office.
Oh, in the office. Oh, okay. Maybe we don't get great connection from Burlington.
You'll get that feedback.
The feedback.
Right.
I'll try it a little.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we need Scott's signature too, or is it 3 enough on this?
3 is enough.
Okay.
We can, I can just put something on that spot. Came
Virtually
through.
voted.
Well, and it'll be in our minutes.
Yes,
Here's the piece of paper I was looking for.
I actually grabbed it, but it was after you were already in.
Never mind, we'll just have to.
Yeah, we'll listen carefully.
Okay.
He's laughing at me.
He is. Okay, the next line item transfer request is from the fire department, from the fire chief. He would like to transfer 25,000 from the line item that has both the full-time and the part-time wages on it into the expenses. The end of the year expenses are still needed for vehicle repairs, uniforms, record maintenance, management software, fuel, ALS intercepts. And the reason was the unanticipated vehicle repairs that he's had, as well as equipment failures. And also they've had additional call increases, so they've had to pay out more in ALS calls than what originally was budgeted for.
Their call volume for April alone was up 40%.
Really?
And yep, it's up, I believe, I haven't gotten the statistics yet for May, but he came before the select board and it was a significant increase. Actually, that might have been March, I'm sorry, 40% in March, and I want to say it was 32% for April. Don't quote me specifically on the numbers, but it was significantly higher between that 12-month
Thank you.
period of last year. A lot of 495 motor vehicle accidents and calls for service at Highland Commons, alarm calls, things of that nature. So, but the ALS side of things, we obviously pay that out to
Yes.
our mutual aid partners that come
Yep.
and deal with that. So when we have those large motor vehicle accidents on the highway, unfortunately with injuries, it depends on who can respond, and the communities have different rates that they charge us. So we've had more than anticipated mutual aid need due to the accidents.
Because we're responsible for the.
We are responsible for that approximately, is it 1 mile stretch on 495?
Yeah, I'm not
I'm sure
sure
someone can
exactly.
tell you exactly how much, if
Yeah.
it's 1.2 or whatever it is.
It's more
but-
than a mile, because I
Is it more
drove it
than
a
a mile?
lot. when I
Okay.
was Used to commute to work. It's a
There
couple
you go.
miles actually in there, but it's in either north and south directions. They're equally bad, and
Mhm.
It's just a bad.
It's a bad
spot.
spot.
it's like a bumper car amusement ride, except it
Mhm.
isn't funny.
I don't want to
Very
say
unpleasant.
that, luckily, but because it is ambulance services that we're paying for, we can, the majority of the time, recoup some of that money, when we do ambulance billing for the services that are rendered. But again, that goes through the whole process of going into the ambulance receipts reserve, and then it gets voted at town meeting.
And
But
insurance
again, it's
companies.
part of the budget
Yeah.
process.
And insurance companies
Yeah.
do cap what they'll
Yeah.
pay out, and Medicare caps
Yeah.
lower. So it all depends on all of those variables of
Yeah.
who's being injured, what their insurance is.
I assume there's a time lag on reimbursement, so
Yeah,
you're
and we have to be very quick on some of them, because once it maxes, then if you're the last one to ask for it, you don't get it. So-
So this is like. It's not an unanticipated expense, it's an expense you can't plan for.
It's an art form. How's
Yeah.
Because
that? To try to
we don't
anticipate
control
it.
traffic, we don't
we don't.
control people driving habits, we don't control.
No, and the fact that the past 2 months have seen that significant increase over the past couple of years, and Chief doesn't really have an explanation for it. I know he was asked at the board meeting, do you have any idea why the accidents are up, or the incidents that are needing ALS are up? And it just is. I mean, unfortunately, people are needing service.
Mhm.
I can tell one thing that with respect to commuter traffic, east-west, in and out of Worcester, it has changed dramatically.
Mm.
Because I do an awful lot of things in Worcester, and I have found I cannot reliably say when I'm gonna be anywhere. It's really different, and that
Mhm.
to the last 5 years has heightened, 10 years started, but
Yeah.
so doesn't surprise me that these volumes are up. And I don't know if Chief has any data on springtime versus winter versus fall.
I think he does. He tracks it monthly. So
I'd be curious whether it's up in the springtime. People, I think, get a little bit happy-go-lucky.
Yeah, because he seemed like he tries to analyze the data,
Yeah.
the statistics, and make sense out of it. But like he said at the previous meetings, it kind of seemed like the last 12 months even was kind of like not making sense to him. It wasn't.
no. And he's very good at analyzing the data, and he gets into the numbers, and he's going, I can't explain
Yeah.
40 and 32% over this time last year. It's
I think anyone who travels on 495 daily or regularly can say that anywhere from Bolton to Franklin is like
Mhm,
It's like a crash zone.
mhm.
You just can't, because
Yeah.
the traffic is so heavy, there's so much merging. It's, I think it's just the nature of the extent of the usage of the road.
We have particularly bad design in the town of Berlin, the section that's in the town of Berlin. It's really,
Yeah, it's one of the more dangerous areas. It has been for
Like
years.
Gates Pond Road, when we know there's a helicopter flying overhead, we know there's something going on.
Yeah.
really,
Which is almost, oh yeah,
Huh.
almost every day there's a helicopter, sometimes there's 2 or 3.
Mhm.
We go, oh, something's going on.
Mhm. Just a question, when we transfer amounts like this from one line item to the other. And I know like fiscal year 2025 isn't by any means wrapped up. Are we gonna fall short on the wages side by
The
transferring
plan
this?
is when we do this, is the answer to that would be absolutely no, we
Okay.
would not. But just keep in mind, unfortunately for him, it is based on call volume too, so that's his best guesstimate at this time. He feels comfortable with saying that there's an extra, as of right now, 25 that would be okay to come out of that without it. Hopefully us not having to come back and ask for it, the reverse.
we've got one more month,
We do,
Correct.
yes.
which is,
Yeah, we have 3 more pay periods between now and the end of the year, so.
Yeah. We do have some newer stability in that wage line item because we now have 4 full-time
Hmm.
firefighter
Mm.
EMTs, which is a little bit easier to track and plan with than being predominantly
Part-timers.
call or
yeah.
per diem. So that helps, I think, some. So I know that when he looks at the amount that's left in that, we look at what's needed or estimated to be needed on the high end for payroll for the next month to make sure that unless something unforeseen happens, then
Yeah.
we should not have to come back to do an adjustment to the wages line item.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, this is bigger than I thought, than I heard. I didn't listen properly.
And if we needed funds for wages,
5,000.
We,
would it come free cash?
no, because, at this point, we don't have a scheduled town meeting and that's the only way to do free cash.
Okay,
It would be a town meeting. At this point, right now, the reserve fund is all that's available that I'm aware of at this time. I'm hoping that where this is getting towards the end of the year, we may have some other options. I hope, but at this time, I don't have actual, numbers.
okay.
But there are significant funds in the
Mhm.
full and part-time salary account, the balances.
Yeah.
It really improved. So we brought on 2 more full-time firefighters, one in December, I believe, and one in January. Before that, they were running significant numbers of open shifts every month. And that was done deliberately to try to address the open shifts. But before that, that's where your unfortunate cost savings comes from. But there's always that risk of not having somebody on. So that's not really a cost savings, it's a risk. But that is why there was extra unanticipated funding in that line item.
Okay, I'll make the motion to transfer $25,000 from expenses, fire units?
No, we're gonna take it from the part-time. and
Part-time
full-time
salaries.
Wages. Yep.
Wages.
From
Mhm.
full and part-time wages to fire and EMS expenses. Yes.
I seconded.
Any further discussion, Scott? Anything?
No, nothing for me.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, now we can hear you well. All right,
Good.
roll call. Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, I.
Scott, I.
All we need to do is pass it back and sign it. We're gonna do this in the correct order.
I jumped the gun.
Good job.
That's okay.
First one.
That's all right. Most of these, the homework's been done. Judy's done the homework, so it's usually,
We try to make it as easy as possible.
I appreciate it.
She does. a
I
great
really do.
job. She really does. This is the time of year that is the most stressful and fun for you. So, you know, it's trying to.
Wonderful. It's a wonderful time of year.
Followed by end of year closeout. So this is, you know, a lot of people think summer's the easier time,
was gonna
not when
say,
you're
you
in
could have
the
just left that
town
vacation.
finance business.
No.
Okay, that's gotta go back to select board.
That's gonna, okay,
That's gotta go back.
I'll give that to Dee to put in the folder for Monday.
Okay, we have two more for one department. We need to come up with some additional funding for the police wages, full-time, part-time line item. We have two places that we can actually move money from for this. One of which is moving or requesting to move 21,000 out of the animal control officer's expense. In fiscal year 25, we had hoped to do a regionalized combo for this, and we had money put aside in the expense
Mhm.
line, but there was no payroll. That fell through, so we wound up paying the part-time animal control officer out of the police wages. So what we're gonna ask here for is where he is running short at this time is if we can transfer $21,000 from the animal control officer's expense line into the wages for the police, because that's where we were actually taking, I believe it's $12,000 for the year on top of a little bit extra that was in there for expenses.
And so that has been moved for FY 26, where ACO wages will be paid out of the police salary. But at this time last year, when we went to town meeting, as June said, we thought we had a regional agreement, so it was pulled out into the intergovernmental section of the budget. And therefore we couldn't touch it until this time of year.
That's part of it. And then we have a second part of that where we would like to request an additional $54,000 out of the town administrator's HR expense line to help cover the costs associated with the payroll that was additional over and above the payments going out for the animal control officer. He also had a couple of other obligations come up between the contractual obligations as well as he was short-staffed. And he had to pay out an additional, is it 15 weeks
Yep.
of overtime?
Due to an IOD injured people that were out for
Yeah.
injured on duty.
As well as additional overtime that was needed to complete the process of or work on completing the process of the accreditation that was also needed.
So there's a second transfer into the police. Salary
Yes,
budget.
so it's gonna be the
So-
21 plus the 54.
And if you remember when we created that line item, much like we did this year, where we parked funding for the chief's contracts that weren't finished. Last year, we parked funding in there for the police union contract that
Right.
wasn't finished.
Right.
So we had always anticipated moving funding out of that HR line item into police
Mhm.
wages because we just didn't know how much we would need at that time. This is a little more. We thought we were gonna be closer to more like 45,000. It is a little bit higher because of those circumstances that June just laid out. But that money we knew was going to need to be transferred over after May 1st, so.
So the chiefs know that this year is not gonna, the upcoming year is fiscal 26, we're not gonna have that kind of flexibility.
That is correct, and that is also why you saw the $180,000 jump in the police department budget for FY 26. Because it had to account for all of these costs. So one thing is we did lose 2 officers through attrition. The 2 new officers that came in had higher educational degrees that cost tens of thousands of dollars more as we went to fully fund educational stipends this year, which we really needed to do to be competitive with surrounding communities. And there's also an additional cost associated with training for bringing in those new officers. And those are things that you really can't anticipate. I would love to say, like, if I knew somebody was going to retire, then perhaps we could set $10,000 or $20,000 aside in the next year. But without someone giving their notice, and even that, I really hate to park funding that might not be used because we just don't have that luxury. I really need us to be able to put funding where we know it's going. Obviously, we have challenges, budget, across the budget in different areas. So these are those things that we run into where, we don't know that people are going to leave and we don't know that the people coming in may have higher degrees. So that's the challenge we run into, and we are obligated under the union contract to make those payouts.
Turnover is generally expensive. People don't, in my
Yes.
experience, don't pay enough attention to that, but you're much better off to retain if it's reasonably possible to do so.
When you usually lost two, when you said you lost two officers due to attrition, what does attrition?
Oh, they went to they left. One went to a different department, and one, not due to retirement or
Okay,
due to
anything other than
termination or,
retirement. Okay.
right. We got two new, officers that came in to replace those spots for officers who had left. One went back to a different profession, the other moved on to a, promotional position in the different community.
Okay. Okay. Let's see if I get it right this time. I'll make the motion to transfer from the animal control officer expense $21,000 to police wages, excuse me, full-time and part-time.
Seconded.
Okay, let's look at the paperwork. May I?
And we also just, so you're aware of it, we did talk to Eric today also, to make sure that we were still in, a line for for the fiscal year 26 budget. So none of this is gonna be, well, hopefully not a surprise going
Correct.
forward. So we think
Unless we
we're
have
still
turnover.
okay. It's not that it'll,
And we're
Hinder.
better staffed now as well,
Yes.
so we're gonna avoid this overtime due to understaffing.
Exactly. That's one of the things we talked about is that
Okay.
the overtime budget will be reduced significantly. We are at 10 officers right now, the 11th officer, the applications were out. They actually received 11 applications for the
That's
11th
excellent.
officer. So I'm hopeful we'll get good candidates and be able to retain. Part of the reason that we did the fully funding of that educational stipend in the union contract is to attract and retain. Because as you mentioned, Mary, it costs us more money.
The
when
turnover
we
is very
have
common.
turnover.
So I'm curious that we have missed nugget ears in here. That's quite fun. It's a description on the ledger.
what did I miss?
Something to do with the animal control officer, Miss Nugget ears.
Oh,
Oh, is that like a vet that she took?
No.
No?
no,
It just caught my
was
eye.
something, yeah, it was who we paid.
We paid them for something.
Yeah.
Not very much, though.
Hmm. Okay.
Maybe that's the name of the business of the animal control officer, Miss Nugget ear. Miss Nugget.
I
It
did
doesn't
not
matter.
look.
It doesn't matter.
But it made you smile, so it was well
Yeah.
worth it, yeah.
Yeah, any further discussion?
That's the whole
I
point.
don't know who seconded that motion.
I did.
Thank you, Heidi.
So we have the motion in the second.
Yes, we do.
Are we okay to go to a roll call vote?
We are now, Mary.
Okay. Roll call vote. Mary, I.
Heidi, I.
Cliff, I.
Scott, I.
Mary, I'm chuckling because the first year I was here, I had an invoice that came up from the police department and they weren't sure if it was something the town should be responsible for because it was for a goat named, I think it was Alfred the Lucky Goat. And we were trying to figure out what had occurred, and it turned out that the goat had some eye issues that needed to be addressed immediately, and they were in our town, and the goat was suffering, so we needed to actually treat the goat. But it was a question of, is that, our responsibility? And it is, if that goat should wander from perhaps another farm in an adjacent community into our town that may not take care of their livestock as well.
So we needed to,
Possibly spread illness or disease. Yeah.
Correct. So we had to treat, and that's why he was named the Lucky Goat. So just thought I'd share that with you.
Mhm.
I see. I see.
Anywho.
Mhm.
Welcome to Berlin.
That's right.
You missed the ears of the camel on Highland Street, though.
Yeah,
There was really.
We had, and it
Yeah.
was so funny to see, because
Oh,
how we do
gosh.
our town report and we list the animals. They list, dogs, cats, chickens, camel, one.
Oh, that is funny. I've not, well, we had alpacas in Leicester. There was a farm that had some.
Yeah, we
We have
have,
alpacas.
yeah, we have
Oh, not
alpacas over on
alpacas.
South Street,
Oh,
yes.
excellent.
Yeah,
And he participated in the live nativity every year.
That's,
I think Balance Rock has a couple of alpacas now.
I had just
That's
never seen a
awesome.
goat be treated, so that was a new one. I mean, usually it's a dog or a cat.
Well, The camel lived down the abandoned railroad tracks from my house, so when he got out, he would wander onto Highland Street, and they would be in the police log. Police log.
The camel was known to the police.
Camel on
Was
Highland
no-
Street, which the camel was known, and his name was Joshua, is Joshua. He lives in Rutland now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lilac Hedge Farm.
So,
Yeah.
That would have been fun to see.
Yes, you missed those years, Kristen.
so I'm gonna make a motion to transfer $54,000 from town administrator HR expenses. Yeah,
Yes?
Yes, sorry.
It's a shame. It's the last one. He's really excited.
What he's giving me.
to police wages, full-time and part-time.
Seconded.
How much are we transferring?
54,000.
54,000?
Yeah, their average
I'll second that
payroll
motion.
is between 44
I
and
beat you.
55.
Oh, you said it already?
I did.
I was,
And I was even late to it.
okay, all right.
I should have brought coffee for you two.
It's
It's
some,
been a long day.
Hmm.
Oh, it's the same stuff, right? So,
Mhm.
any other discussion?
No.
Before we vote? Okay, roll call vote, Mary, I.
ADI.
Cliff, I.
Scott, I.
Thanks, Scott.
I think Scott needs some coffee too.
and just to also let you, just so you're aware of it, is currently right now, you still have $45,000 in the reserve fund if need be, or hopefully you don't need
Okay.
it. And we'll see what we can come up with for additional funding if needed for. Not yet. Like we have one more bill. This week we're putting through the last bill, so we'll have that.
Is this the last of the transfers, Jim? No.
That is the last one that I have, yes.
Ooh,
Excellent.
hey.
Good. So we can go on to the next agenda item, which is meet finance committee candidate for open position. Come on up.
Come on out. Please join us.
And do you already have the name, Cliff, or do you need a name?
I do.
Did.
This is Sheena Bryan.
Sheena Bryan, thank you. Hi, Sheena.
Hello.
Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you for having me.
You just saw what we do. That's the part that is a little less exciting, which is nice, because some parts get exciting, and this is. But actually, it is very important. I'll just say that I take it, you know, I'm a volunteer, we're appointed, we don't run for office and all that. But I take quite seriously the responsibility because I'm sitting here for a bunch of citizens out in town that don't have the time and the means to be sitting here, and we do look at the dollars and cents, and June does a terrific job of queuing it up for us, and Kristen keeps it on the rail. So, what should I tell you about what we do that you might not know? And well, why don't you tell us about yourself? When did you land in Berlin, and what's your impression of things here? What made you come to us? How's that?
I was looking for a house in 2021 and I started at the top of 495 and worked my way up and down, and it was I think a very wonderful coincidence that we were able to buy in Berlin.
You didn't have an accident at 290 and 495.
I was trying to avoid, I was actually commuting from Auburn, which is south of Worcester, to work. It was like an hour and 10 every day, which is off Route 2. I work behind Emerson Hospital.
Yeah.
And I was trying to avoid 290 and I said, anything, if I could live one exit of before the 290 exit, the 495, 290 off ramp, if I could live one exit ahead, or that was my dream, and that was what happened.
Cool.
Yes. I came in 2021 and we love it. We're in our home. I don't plan to move anytime soon, and so I thought it would be nice to be a part of the town and volunteer and give back.
That's great. And we have
I
met,
love the town, all the people. It's been very good to us.
yeah, we met last year during the
Yes.
school budget discussions.
Last year,
That's what I'm
yes.
recalling, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I knew we had
I
a
started coming
conversation.
last year to some.
Okay.
And I believe that Sheena did fill out a volunteer application. I believe that it was sent around, but I didn't know if you wanted to speak a little bit to your background and what you do now.
Sure, so I oversee the human resources function for an organization.
Mhm.
I'm vice president of human resources, and so that involves managing a payroll workforce
More
budget.
vice, just like me.
Yeah.
More vice. More vice. I get it.
President always gets to tell me what extras that I have to do, yeah. But I manage a workforce payroll for an organization, it's about 30 million.
Yeah.
And with that comes payroll, comes overtime, comes, managing middle managers, directors, managing all of that, and then benefits. How we
Ideas.
can-
If we have, I need ideas.
Yeah. For that.
Yes, which is awesome.
Yes, so managing that, and I work for a senior living community, so it's like our own town, right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of parallels to what, that happens here in Berlin if you thought of Berlin as an organization, as a senior living community, I run a little small town with my
Sure,
CEO and my CFO.
that makes sense.
I'm in charge of the people working and giving service to older adults, and then the older adults, I have to make sure that they're the number one reason we're in business, which is our residents, right? And I have to give them an increase every year, and I have to explain it. So I have to say, this is why workforce is increased by X%. This is why every year they're getting an annual increase, which is similar to what this committee is trying to do for our town residents, right? Keep this at a low. increase.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and we have, like all the other municipalities, we have that Proposition 2.5, so.
Exactly.
So, but then you get told, oh, you gotta do more over here, and then you have somehow, how do you make that work?
Right.
And Kristen fortunately has the spreadsheet. This committee used to operate the spreadsheet before we had a town administrator.
And now,
So Kristen
Give
is
you
our
a little
second
break.
town administrator, so we have. When I first joined, and Scott up in the sky had that experience too, because he was this is his second round on the finance. I don't want to talk for you, Scott, you can talk about it, but it's much nicer now having somebody right here in the town office managing that spreadsheet and keep doing the balance between revenue and expense and revenue and expense.
And you're more than welcome to retain ownership of that.
I was gonna say,
Well,
it's a
yeah.
lot. I'm happy to take it off of you all. I'm very impressed that everyone did it here through the finance committee for so long. It's.
Buzz Harris had a huge bag he'd walk in and out with,
You know,
it went with him.
was it like attached to his arm?
No, he
Locked or
carried it.
Yes.
the money, bag?
Yeah, so we're moving into the 21st century here.
Yeah, and the easier thing back then, it was, for some reason, things just were less controversial back then before the era of social media. Finance committee was able to work in, I think, a much more peaceful tone than unfortunately things have devolved into today. But what I wanted to do is just give a little background of like what the workload involves this, because it's very unbalanced throughout the year.
Well, my
So you're able to hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So right now we're going into our light schedule. Right now after town meeting, assuming when town meeting goes well, and we don't need to come back for a special town meeting. During the summertime, we don't pretty much meet much at all. We just meet these periodic ones here after town meeting to do what you just witnessed, any type of accounts that we can, in the last 2 months of the fiscal year, the state allows us to transfer funds from different line items. And likewise, if there's any unanticipated expenses that require a reserve fund transfer. And we'll always do a meeting as close, or at least scheduled for as close to July 15th, because that's the last day you can do something for the previous fiscal year. So even today's scheduled meeting was not something we were knowing for certain we'd have. If there was no line transfers of that stuff, we would just canceled and then scheduled, something for June, just to have something on the calendar for whatever is anticipated, so we can have the books cleared up and not have to walk into, first thing on the town meeting, having items where we have to pay old bills. So we get into this light part of the schedule. We start ramping up again September, which is more or less scheduling. And also at that point, we also start, what are the, the planning for the next fiscal year. This is where you'll find out like what the anticipated COLAs will be. The employees go through the reviews, so we get, they're going through to see about what step increases and such. And we also do just the basic math of how much, adding another 2.5% to the levy limit to know how much additional funds that we have available each year. And we're really get into the intense part is usually the last meeting before we take the Christmas break in December. We usually start meeting with departments, and then we meet every week after that, anticipating from January, February, and March, and sometimes right around that first week of April, because that's kind of the cutoff date right there where we have to be finished in order to get things to the printers and get things out to the voters in the
That's the first quarter of the year.
required time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, just plan it. Sorry, Scott, but
Yeah.
I want to underscore that as you have no Wednesday nights the first quarter of the year. And on our really special nights when we can go late. Although Kristen tells us that her mother always said nothing good happens after 11 o'clock in the evening, but sometimes we're here at that time, but not that often.
And I get punchy as we approach 9 p.m.
I was just
so-
gonna say, but Kristen starts to get a little wonky,
I do.
like 9:01.
Yeah, sometimes it's like 8:56 even. I mean,
Wow.
so.
But the other hand, as Scott was saying, the other 9 months of the year is pretty light. So if I look at what the select board does, which is really very steady through the year, we're all kind of pushed together and it's during the bad weather, so it's not so bad.
I
Yeah.
would disagree with Mary's assessment, so just go with that. That was the speech she gave me to persuade me to join the finance committee.
Well, you're not supposed to
And
be.
there
telling us
wasn't
that
a shred
now.
of truth to it, so,
Did you get iced tea too with yours?
no.
You were
No,
promised iced tea.
I got iced tea when I got the pep talk. Yes.
Yeah, but when you volunteer for this committee, you do need to know that there is a workload. And it is, this is my perspective. And it's light, yes, after town meeting, but it seems like there's always a reason to be meeting when we shouldn't be meeting. And then once the budget cycle starts, and it actually starts before Christmas break, because we meet with the school districts before then.
Correct.
So that
Second
starts
week of
early,
December,
And
usually.
then we start having joint meetings with the select board on top of the meetings on Wednesday. So it's not a light load, generally speaking. And that's okay, but you need to know that up front. I can't remember how many weeks this spring we had 2 meetings every week.
Yeah.
But there were a significant number of them.
You're destroying my credibility, Cliff.
Mary, I love you to death. That's
That's
the facts.
Mary's being optimistic.
And this is not my attempt to persuade you not to join us,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't want you to join us with a false narrative.
It's a commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely a commitment. And on the plus side of that, you get an insight to how everything happens in the town that you can't get any other way.
Right. And the schedule is very well laid out. It's not like you find out Monday night, oh, they've put meetings in this week. It's
Right.
it is very well planned out and you know well ahead of time, like what you have to pencil in on your own calendar. So there's very few surprises as far as
Beyond. the
sudden
first quarter
meetings.
Wednesdays.
Right, nothing outside of the Wednesdays or an occasional combined with the select board in the spring.
Occasional.
Yeah.
We seem to have quite a few.
I think you
Spring.
had 2 or 3 this year.
Sometimes the select
Yeah.
board will come to our meeting, sometimes we go to their meeting. We need to have, just more efficient sometimes to have deliberation done by both boards at the same time. So ultimately, I think it saves you time when you do that, but and then because of the Boylston connection through the BBRSD, so there's sometimes places in the first quarter of the year when we want to sit with people either from Boylston or from budget subcommittee or something like that. So those are kind of voluntary things, whoever's available has the time and can be part of the discussions when you're building up the numbers. And it is helpful to be involved at that level. And also for the two towns to coordinate as much as they can what they do. But because there's a finance committee in Boylston as well.
And
We have
somebody-
a select board, they have a board of selectmen, but it's the same thing, 3
Yep.
people.
Sorry.
No,
Didn't mean to
please.
interrupt. I was just gonna say, to Heidi's point, we set that calendar in late September, early October.
Yeah, usually at
So
the
you'll
beginning.
know well in advance, once we get into, the season, where everything will be. The heaviest month, in my opinion, is March. Expect to meet almost every Wednesday, pretty much in March. And some select board meetings thrown in there as well. That's when really we're getting down to brass tacks, so to speak, and trying to make the parts of the budget that aren't balancing balance, because we start out with presentations from the departments, schools, ASABIT, town departments, and then I try to piece it all together. I make a recommended budget. The select board provides input on that budget. They do their votes, and then the FinCom does their votes. So it's a whole kind of cycle. So by the time we're down to March, this is really where we're at going, okay, it's the nitty gritty of what's actually going to go to town meeting. So March is the month
Decisions.
it's hard
happen in March.
decisions. Yeah, and it's the month I just tell my husband I'm not gonna see you at all. So that's really how it goes. And he knows now after 3 years, so he's all set.
Yeah, there will also be, we, I think, anticipate having another special town meeting in the fall or early winter this year. Last year we had one in December.
Yes,
So
I
that's a
am-
much lighter one.
yes. I've been asked to come up with a date for a proposed fall/winter special town meeting, where the select board will hopefully set that at their second meeting in June.
So you may realize that we're asked to make a recommendation on every warrant article that goes before town
Yes,
meeting
we did.
with those that have a financial impact and we used to do the capital stuff as well, but now we have a separate capital planning committee. And we need a liaison to that committee, actually. They meet on Thursdays.
Yes, we still have to resolve that. But one other thing too, we've also, at least my own tradition of being I was first on the finance committee in 2006 and went through June of 2012, so 7 budget cycles, and then rejoined in 2021 up through now. And one of the things we've always kind of utilized is, having everybody get to, ask the questions and go to details. We never done anything to be a rush of things to try and say we're coming in and we're going to be out by 9 o'clock every day. I think everybody knows that. At least when I've been running the meeting, I let the people have their own, their say. That can always change in the future, but you can anticipate the meetings will run a bit longer. But at least everybody does get their say, and nobody has ever walked away saying that they weren't informed or did not get their opinion in.
That's fair, Scott. Fair assessment.
Do you have questions for us?
So beyond the starting in December and
Mhm.
every week in first quarter, there's special. Sometimes with select.
Every now and again,
Every
yes.
now and
Yep,
This is
mostly during
primarily
budget
the
season.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
that is
One meeting
primarily
in
the schedule.
December and then every Wednesday.
Yeah,
And I'm hearing 7:30 to maybe.
9. 9, yeah. That's
Oh, 9 is probably when you're
Yeah,
lucky to
we've done
get out.
later a couple times, but it's not like every single one. And if I recall, the joint meetings, did those
They
get
meet
scheduled
earlier.
on the same night? We just ended up having to be here a little earlier.
Yeah, I think the select board meets at 7.
They meet at 6:30.
Yeah.
6:30, yeah.
So it wasn't like you had to lose like 2 evenings out of the week. It was the same evening, just showing up a little bit
Yeah.
earlier.
Right, we tried to combine them too, because we have select board members that are interested in going to FinCom, vice versa. And then, it doesn't seem to make sense to present the same thing twice to two
Sure.
committees in 1 week, so.
And
What-
there is flexibility. I mean, I'm out of town.
So that was my
Yeah.
next question. So I know obviously in person is
Yeah.
probably preferred, but if I was late at work, I could join for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, you would, but
Yeah.
you'd be sounding like Scott. You'd be
Yeah.
God and Scott.
Sure.
Um,
And family emergencies come up and there's times it's not feasible, you can't be here.
Yeah.
You
And
have
that
a
would
life,
be-
you have a life
Oh, yeah.
outside of this room.
yeah,
I know Mary and I have attended these meetings virtually.
Okay.
Oh,
We can even
definitely,
get your
yeah.
photo up too, so.
Yes, we do have the flexibility now with the hybrid meetings. That definitely helps. So that's good. For wanting to get past history, and maybe even Kristen can show this on the screen. On the town website, there is the listing of all the past meetings. So if you go into the meetings and minutes and agenda from the front page of Town Berlin, and you will see there, you can actually filter on Finance Committee, and you'll see the history. You can see the dates of every single meeting we had. And so there you can get a general idea. You can look over the last, I mean, actually it goes back, this goes back to at least what, 2008 or so. And so you can get a general idea of how often we meet and what time of the year. So you can kind of use that as a good guide to know what you're getting yourself into.
Sorry.
So, Scott's, I think Scott, you need to be at, Shane, I don't know if you're aware of but you know that the
Yes.
My Town government, and then
Yes.
there's two web places to go.
Mhm.
So all of the meetings are on the My Town
Yes.
government one, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how long that will persist, but for now, that's the way it is, so.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. If you go to mytowngovernment.org//01503, you can actually select the FinCom from the list of boards, like Scott said, and you can't really see it unfortunately, because it's small, but it gives you every meeting that's been posted,
Yeah.
because they all have to be posted under opening law.
Yes. So you
the
can
other
get
thing
a
that-
good view of how many times we meet in a year and when the intense months are and when the less intense months are. Only thing it doesn't show you, unless you open up the minutes, is the adjourning, how long the meeting went that day.
Yeah, you have to look at the minutes. The other thing, Scott, Kristen has set up a Google Docs drive. So the budget documents, each of the department that submits a proposed budget. We can that's why it's easy to work remotely if we need to, because you just go into the Google Drive and you've got the current documents, which Kristen is keeping us up to date on.
So how many hours a week do you feel like on average you spend prepping for meetings?
I don't do a lot of homework, but from time to time, I've taken a deep dive into how things work, and that I could spend hours and hours and hours on that, but no, there isn't a lot of homework except
Yeah.
it's a good idea to look at the Google documents.
Right.
No,
So it's
Right,
come
there's-
to the meeting.
Yep.
Be present, listen,
Mhm.
Yes,
make the
yes,
unified decision, and then,
yes. That's.
Yes.
and when I go home, there's no
No,
homework.
No,
unless you're the secretary.
Well,
well, the clerk.
there,
here.
I mean, there's a
You can-
little bit of things that you prepare for probably. So for example, we will know like what departments are, so all the departments have to have their budgets in, forget what the date is it November or
November,
what's,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And,
End of
and
November.
and we'll have the agenda of,
Yes.
Yeah.
for meeting with
I mean, you can
highway,
always-
or library. So those will all be in that Google Drive, so you can look at what they'll be presenting beforehand. So you don't have to, I mean, you can show up, I mean, if you don't have the time to, some of them are very simplistic, but you can also read them beforehand. And if there's any questions, especially being new, that you want to ask, it's one of those things, it's the only way you learn is by speaking up and asking those questions. Because look, put it this way, there was lots of questions I even had difficulty getting answered when I first joined. My most infamous was the referral to the mall cops, which I all, which initially anticipated that meant the police officers that were at the Solomon Pond Mall, but that was not the situation at all. It was all based on the fact that when the Solomon Pond Mall came in, there was a mitigation fund that was anticipated to fund 2 police officers for 10 years, and we would take the funds from that. And that was what was referred to as the mall cops. But when you first joined, if you didn't ask the question, know the details, that's what you thought was if you cut that, you always have a police officer patrolling the Solomon Pond Mall, but it wasn't. So it's one of those things you speak up and get the right, know what was actually being described there, because a lot of generic terms and this terminology that the town will use does not actually represent what you come up with, in your mind about what that means.
Another area, yeah, another area, Scott, that I did spend a little time on when I was fairly new is that the state, there's a division of local services within the Department of Revenue, and they support municipalities and people like us, getting us acclimated and so on. So I attended a one-day training in Worcester when I was early on in the, because there are so many terms, what the
Yes.
tax levy is, those
Yes.
to understand the revenue side and understand some other commitments. And so, but those, if you want that kind of thing, if you're that kind of person, you can go do it. June,
Some online.
They're all
now,
on-
and they're online
Well,
now. Yeah, so it makes it even easier.
So if you have a free Sunday.
Trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
So
There's a great resource though, if I could just quickly,
Oh, yeah.
it's called the Municipal Finance Training and Resource Center. It's through mass.gov, but if you literally Google Municipal Finance Training and Resource Center, it is awesome. They actually used to conduct this training in person, and it was 8 Fridays. I think they tried this in 2014. I took it. And it was difficult to do because it was an all-day, 8-hour thing. But they literally have broken it down into videos that you can watch. And when you go on that site, it says first time, start here. And it literally gives you a really simple walkthrough of all the terms. And I love it. So I've been trying to. This is a relatively new thing that they've put together. So I've been trying to promote it whenever I remember to do so.
So that's not in the Division of Local Services, right?
It
Or
is.
It
It's
is
the
within-
DLS,
okay.
it's the DLS Municipal Finance Training and Resource Center. But it's
So-
all been brought online now, which is really neat. And they go through the cycles of each season in the town and what processes when setting the tax rate, doing the budget. It's really helpful.
So it's not to volunteer and do what we do in this committee. You don't have to know all that stuff. Just a question of how curious you are, how much time you have. And like Scott said, if you find yourself saying, what's a mall cop? And you got the wrong idea. I mean,
Yeah.
it's there, and they do make it, it's pretty straightforward, I think. I like
Yeah.
the Division of Local Services. And then I'm on their email list. So I get, it's another source of email, and most of them I don't do much with, but occasionally something comes through. And things like the preliminary budget numbers coming out of the state, which impact school revenues, impact town revenue. So that stuff I can get an early warning because it's all, the Division of Local Services puts it out in an email blast to all of the people involved in public finance in the state. Who are, if you give me your email address, they'll send you the emails. It's that kind of thing.
And Kristen and June are both very good at explaining what's being presented. Because again, with social media, you have people joining via YouTube and via Zoom, and they're part of the community, but not everybody is necessarily a numbers person. Not everybody can look at it, something face value and know what it says. So both Kristen and June are very good at explaining it to a
Anytime
level
you have
that
questions.
I would say the majority of the people in the community can understand.
And I think that's really important because if you're not able to understand it, how can you go to town meeting and vote? How can you help
Right,
make
yeah.
recommendations? So there's never a dumb question. There's never a bad time to contact us. We're always here, and we'll get back to
And
you.
it's usually good too, because we get a lot of, from a new person, you get a different eyesight of what's going on. So that way they're like, when Heidi first came on, she had questions that we kind of just
Take
you
for granted.
forget about,
Yes.
because, we take for granted a lot of times. So by all means, any type of question you have, or you want to learn more, absolutely ask.
And most people working, raising family, doing stuff in town, don't feel like they can put the time in, and they do absolutely rely on our recommendations, right? So again, I take that pretty seriously,
Yeah, I do.
that we do that as, you know, it's a civic volunteer thing that's important. Especially in direct democracy, you know, you're in the room, it's happening.
That's right. Live. We
You
even
gotta
do
be ready to
numbers
go.
live, which scares me, but we do it.
Yeah, but your experience in what you do, I think would definitely be an asset.
Absolutely, yeah, you've
Yeah.
got a great.
Yeah.
Background for doing this, yeah. I hope
So
it doesn't
those
feel
are my
like. we're-
questions. What are you looking for in a committee member, like for this team? What are you?
Well, you know, the commitment that you're gonna do your best to show up for the meetings and engage and ask questions and do that kind of thing, obviously you're bringing in experience with numbers and organizations that is always valuable, right?
Yeah, what we're looking for is, you know, everybody can be an independent voice, and preferably making sure that nobody comes in, you know, with a predetermined agenda. And it comes down to open, you know, mind to looking at, because again, it's the entire town, including the schools. So taking all that in perspective and learning the process. Again, obviously the commitment. A lot of it is just being that, you know, knowing that you have an independent voice. Once you're appointed to the committee, whatever slot you would slide into. I mean, appointment can be up to 3 years. Right now, the open slot is available for 1 year. My slot is also open after June 30th. And once you're on, until your appointment comes up again, you're on. And you know, and the idea is that you'll be independent and not being, like, say, um, you know, wanting to, like, say, preferably avoiding people to have any type of agendas.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's never, at least in my experience with working with the others on the finance committee so far, there's never been any pressure, any coercion to adhere to anything in one person's, you know, Scott's the chair, but there's never there has never been any pressure like his view and his opinions are how the rest of us, everybody's opinion and everybody's viewpoint of the different budget items is taken into consideration and valued.
I think it helps a lot on some items that you may have a better idea on something that we didn't even think about, so, yeah.
Yeah, a big key is everybody respecting each other on the committee. I've never had that problem ever. Only thing we've ever encountered now over the last couple of years is from some other boards, and actually very narrow set of boards that are, you know, taking personal attacks and other things that you'll know, you can just brush it to the side, and that's what you'll need to do, because there are others out there trying to do everything they can to make it on their agenda, and will do nothing to stop the bullying process. So we need to be aware of that. And if you have any questions on that or things, I can show you examples that have come through emails and such. So it has gotten nasty over the last couple of years. And there's a few people that are leading that nastiness. But at the same time, once you're on the committee, I mean, we're looking to be independent and just avoiding those type of controversies.
Yeah, thanks, Scott, that's.
It just, I mean, when you get, so, I mean, the town keeps growing population wise. So it's inevitable that's gonna happen. I mean, because you get so many different personalities. You're all kind of working for the same endpoint.
Right.
But you know, you get the different personalities. And like Scott said, you just have to kind of roll with it and try to work through it. And
This group is very collegial. We're appropriate with each other, I think. And we do our deliberation in the public sessions. So, you know, open meeting law, a quorum is majority of the people in the committee. So we're 4 now. So if one of us talks to one other, that's not a quorum. But as a 5-member board, 3 people make a quorum. So, but we've been, my experience, as people have come and gone from the finance committee, it's always been a very respectful committee. People to one another and of that obligation in the open meeting laws. And it's a very important aspect to, you know, wherever, hello camera, right? To have that conversation in the public eye. Because when we don't agree on everything,
Mm-mm.
and this is where you put it out on the table. So I think that's something in terms of expectations, that's my expectation of people around the table is that we keep doing that. That's what we're supposed to do. So I think it's important to remember, you know, if you're looking at this, actually looking at any of these public committees in town, you know, where you volunteer, that public meeting law applies to everything.
Absolutely.
So,
But no, I've always had I've been very fortunate in that I obviously attend, you know, many different meetings, and there is a respect pretty much across the board within the boards and committees that I've worked with, particularly Select Board and FinCom I work with the most, but Capital, Energy, Planning Board, you know, it's really nice because again, we don't have to agree, but we have to be respectful to one another. And I think that's really, really important. We don't have any control over social media, obviously. And I think that might be what Scott was getting at. And
yes,
it took me a long time to get used to that. You know, and it does get heated around budget season, and that is understandable. And, you know, I have seen, not here, but in other places, some very terrible things on social media. And I have been advised by legal counsel that it's freedom of speech. Unfortunately, you know, there's nothing that you can do if somebody unfortunately goes at you strongly on social
just
media.
turn it off.
Don't read it.
Just don't go.
Just don't read it. And I'm not saying that'll happen to you, but I'm just, you know, it's just a warning when you do put yourself out in the public and that public position, it's, you know, there is that misinformation sometimes that's out there. There's always people that don't have the full facts or the full understanding, and people are very passionate. And I get that, you know, there's a passion about what our interests are, what we do. It's just, you know, one of the first things I had to learn in this industry, if you will, or this job, is to not take it personally. And it's a hard thing. It took me years.
Yeah, and I, you know, when I'm around town, I'm semi-retired, so I'm, you know, I don't know. I annoy people that go all sorts of places around town, but people talk to me about financial issues in the town, so I get a give and take, you know, I get that dialogue going. And mostly the people are kind. I don't get a lot of in-person, I don't get any in-person sort of negativity,
No.
but people they want to know, they'll ask me, and you can expect that. But I find that actually a pleasure. I don't find that a problem. And they'll give me messages to bring back, you know, looking for my voice to amplify what they're thinking, issues they're having, so.
And you can always refer people to our office too, if it's
Yep.
if it's a complex. I know I spent a lot of time with a parent this year who really did a deep dive and wanted to really understand. And it was actually great because it was an opportunity for me to learn how to explain, like we were talking about, how to explain things in a way that makes sense. And it really sharpened my own skill set to be able to bounce those ideas off and be like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, or I hadn't looked at it that way, or like, oh, well, that's interesting. You know, maybe we should consider that. So, you know, my door is always open when I'm not in a meeting, and, you know, residents, that's the one thing I love about being in a small town. I can have a resident come in, they're upset about something. I can meet with them right then and there usually. So, you know, always happy to have people come in, but people are genuinely, I have to say, here in the town hall, very, very respectful as well when they come in, which is really, really nice. And, you know, sometimes people are upset about their taxes. We get that, totally understand. But, you know, people are willing, they want to have a dialogue. They want to have a conversation. And I know if Peg were here, she'd tell you, you know, the transfer station, she always gets grabbed with questions about what's going on in town, but it's people that really want to know. And like you said, they want to give their feedback. And I think that's great.
So do you now understand fully the split tax rate consequences? I tried to take the lesson from the parent.
Full consequences. Yes.
Man, it was deep.
It was really deep. It took me, I think we had 3 or 4 2-hour Friday Zoom calls. But, we got there. I was very impressed.
I got it in person.
It was impressive. I mean, it's a deeper dive than I've ever taken as a generalist, and I really appreciated it. In all honesty, it was great.
Yeah. It is complex.
it is super complex. Municipal finance is odd, as I tell people, because it is not the way it works in the nonprofit sector. It's not the way it works in the private sector. It's an odd duck. It has its own unique set of rules, regulations, and things that sometimes you just go, that makes no sense. Why do we do it that way? And then it sort of all starts to piece together and you're like, oh, because that's how it has to work. Okay, get
But
it.
you don't have to go down.
The rabbit hole.
You
Yeah.
don't have to do
No,
it.
no, no.
And it's like,
She's-
get around it.
She's into self-torture.
Yeah,
Yes, she is,
you
just
get
a
into
little
real
bit.
estate assessments.
In a
and,
good way.
You know, we have a town assessor down the hall here and that's where it
You
starts.
can really get into it.
That's where it really gets
Yeah.
on. But then that is such a huge impact on our revenue that certain questions come up and you want to know. How does that thing work?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I don't.
Well,
go that
I'm
far,
kind
but
of a municipal finance nerd, so it's interesting to me. That's
torture
why I do
myself,
this.
yes. Yeah.
I want to make sure you get your questions answered. Have you?
Have we overwhelmed you? Have we made you want to run for the hills?
So I'm very committed to my organization. That's my livelihood. That's my
Mm.
Mhm.
future, my everything. So that will always come first.
Yes.
Of
Mhm,
course.
mhm.
I just want to be very clear.
Well, Scott's in his
Yeah.
office, so you know.
Yeah. So
we-
that's,
it's-
Mhm.
that's
that's
absolutely,
my
yeah.
commitment to my.
And that's what I'm
organization.
here for. If something's, you're
Yeah.
stuck on or something needs to
Yeah.
be communicated and you can't be there, reach
Okay.
out to me, reach out to Scott. We're here to
Yeah.
help.
Mm.
Okay, so I was looking what you.
That's
wanted.
expected. That's
Okay.
not a problem.
I
Yeah.
think I'm the HR professional. I'm always teaching people to be professional, to be open-minded, to, I think I practice that pretty well. I don't, you know, foresee any issues with that. I don't have any social media, so that's.
Yay.
hopefully-
That's a good thing. I don't either, and
The
I,
voice from beyond.
I do.
That's
you know,
hours in
some
your day.
people,
Hours in your day.
if we make a decision, they're not gonna go to my job or send a clip or a video. Like
No.
I do worry
No.
about that.
No.
No, and I
The
think-
exposure that I'll have,
No.
I think because this committee is collegial and the town generally is that way and whatever hiccups we have, it's not going to arise in this kind of place either. I mean, we don't operate like that in Berlin.
Mhm. Okay.
Um,
We have me a little worried there with this.
no.
And that was fair for you to feel worried, but it's not the reality.
There are just some people that become very passionate about some of their things and they definitely are not gonna back down on their opinion sometimes, but it knock on wood, I don't know of anything that's ever been like out of hand type of a.
No.
No, it's more of a just, they have an opinion or.
And they usually
you
get
have an
mad at
opinion.
Yeah, or get mad at me, so don't worry
Yeah.
about it. That's my job to take it, not
Okay.
yours.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's not anything to affect what I
I've
do.
never
No,
known
no,
that
no,
sort of thing happened
no.
to anybody
Okay.
that volunteered here.
Yeah, and
In this committee or elsewhere. I've
yeah,
never heard.
and I don't think we'd continue to volunteer if that situation was arising.
Yeah, no,
But
but if you do ever have a problem, come to
Yes.
Kristen like immediately, if you do ever find a problem or an issue.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
My
we've never had any. but-
style is to be professional, do what I'm asked to do. Report on facts.
Yeah,
So we
And
don't-
I
Mm.
try to just stay under the radar
yeah.
in everything that I do, so.
Yeah, me too. It's not working out so well
Yeah.
for me, but I try. Everywhere, right? Her name is like, listed. Maybe you can give me some advice on it.
Mhm.
I was wondering the learning curve, but you've kind of answered that. I wanted to know like the main goal of this committee, so I always work best when I understand the goal. What is the end outcome that we're looking
Well,
for?
it's checks and balances. This is the people's money that we're spending.
Yep.
And we're part of the checks and balances.
Yeah.
You may have a 2-signature policy if you're spending money on something in your organization.
Yeah.
We're a little bit like that. So these transfers that we did tonight, the select board is also signing off. June's vetting it from the accounting perspective, the professional
Mhm.
perspective. And so, and I can't see our chiefs or our department people making stuff up because the consequences are not pleasant. But anyway, we're really checks and balance. That's our, and recommendations. Once you understand likely expenses and likely revenues and budgets are fiction writing to some extent because you can't see in the future, but you do the best you can, best estimates, so. So that's the goal is to wisely use the money that the taxpayers are given the town.
Yes.
So they get the services back that they need and expect. and we do it in as efficient way as we can. So, and I think really it's we're citizens, we're check and balance on spending the public money.
Which kind of sounds like what you do, where you, yeah,
Mhm.
Because every workforce wants more and more and more, right?
and but you can
We
only,
can only get
tax the
so, and
people
I can
so
only
much,
increase
and-
our residents.
Yeah.
So much, absolutely. And I have to explain it.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it too, reviewing the justification
Absolutely.
for it. Like even the transfers we did tonight, it wasn't just a simple request, oh, you need to transfer this dollar amount from this account to this account. Well, why?
Right.
Why do we have to transfer this? Why did it fall short or why did it go over budget? And then, we sometimes there's more of a discussion than what you witnessed.
sometimes
Um,
we might have to go back for more answers if
Yeah.
there's questions.
So
or-
that was one of my questions.
Yeah.
So if we say I posed a question, like, what can you ask the chief X, Y, and Z?
Mhm.
Mhm.
You didn't want to sign that, would that be?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could have decided not to make a motion and not to vote on it.
Or we could have decided to make a motion and not get a second, and then nothing happens.
Right.
And sometimes depending on what the circumstances are, the department will come in
Mhm.
if need be, and discuss it too in more depth. Which they do when they present their budgets. Usually they'll come in with a whole list full of.
Oh, yeah.
And then when they present their budgets in November, is that a time to ask the questions?
Yep.
Did you
Mhm.
do this? Did you do that?
Yep.
And then have
Yep.
sent them back and then have them report back with the answers.
Mhm.
But they're, just so you know, the process internally here, so their budgets will get submitted. June reviews them to make sure they're accurate in terms of, everything
Dollar
adds up.
amounts, not-
Last year's amounts, it's
Mhm.
correct, is there anything that looks out of the ordinary? She sends them to me. I review them, I meet with the departments. Then it goes to the FinCom for all the meetings, and this is where the actual departments and boards and committees will come in and go line by line, which is great.
Oh.
But there's also a lot of review before it even gets to that point too, and it's the same with the transfers. I go through it, June goes through it, we talk to the department head, we're like, okay, how do we stop that if possible from happening in a future year? Is there a safeguard that we can put in place? Sometimes there's not, as you saw. Sometimes there is.
And many times in these transfers, if June has the information early enough, she'll circulate the paperwork to us ahead, and then if there's a question, you can get in front of when we actually sit down to review, and vote, and sign.
Mhm.
But that's not an expectation. It was nice to have.
No, but it
Yeah.
would be nice if we could do that, just so that way I forget things too. So it's one of those where you may have a question on something and I can get that answer for you or have them come in for the meeting too, so. Yep.
Those are most of my questions. So
Okay.
I
It's a good
think I'll
list.
bring transparency, balance,
Mhm.
professionalism. And then I've been on, in touch with the school, and I was hoping to really help be a liaison there for the committee and the school, and if that's something you would
We need it.
Mhm.
want.
I
or-
think that would be great.
Yeah.
We actually did at one time had a finance committee member that actually would go to
Liaison.
all of the
Yeah.
school meetings and
I'm
things
not
like
sure
that.
I can
When,
commit to that, but I think I could talk to Al Gaham often and in conjunction with Kristen, and I'm hoping that would be
because I thought it was really helpful when we did have that person, because they would have more detailed things, because they would ask questions
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
And bring it back here to help explain like, why did this go up so much? Well, you would know that.
Yeah, so during last year's, my daughter entered kindergarten, came to these meetings, that's when I kind of started.
That's
to-
when we talked. Yeah.
Started
you
to
were
get
just getting-
involved,
yeah,
right, and now
yeah.
she's second year in school, so I'm more involved. And so, yeah, but I would like to be in touch with him, and he's offered to walk me through
Mhm.
different things that I had questions, right, and I want to understand what I'm paying for, what our town is paying for, and
Mhm.
help with the transparency of what is going on, which I think this committee has felt, we could use a little more. Is that fair?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think that, understanding it even from a deeper dive too, on the school side, I get into it,
Yep.
you know, pretty deep, and Al and I have a great working relationship and communication, but it, you know, I can't think of every question or solution myself. So to have all of these people
Right.
at the table putting their heads together is fantastic. And, you know, you don't necessarily have to go to all the meetings. I try to watch them too as much as I can, but again, you know, there's only so many hours in the
Right.
day, so, but yeah, it's great to track it, you know, if you can.
And I think getting the factual circumstances out, getting accurate information out, I think a lot of parents get very afraid in the last few years. And I don't think they needed to be. I think that because they didn't understand the facts. And that's why I think having somebody who moves easily in both areas
Yes.
is a
Mhm.
real benefit,
Mhm.
you know, to help us
Yes.
move on from 3 years where it's really, where we didn't have transparency, we didn't have, you know, we've had so many issues. And uncharacteristically for Berlin, the kind of conflict that you witnessed as a fairly new resident, that's not normal here.
Mm-mm.
So I think, yes, having your access to people in schools and to be able to do this, I think would be helpful all around.
Okay.
Yeah, I really do.
And then
Yeah.
obviously with workforce and benefits, I'll probably have a lot of questions, but that's my.
Mine.
That's my
okay.
bread and butter.
That's right.
You know?
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
am not a school expert, but I can always carry those questions that anyone has to back to Al, and we
Yes.
kind of had that
Okay.
like great line of communication going to when there were questions, you know, feeding them back.
And I know it got better this year.
It really was.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think one of the key components to that too was that Kristen and Al were our direct lines. It wasn't 5 different people contacting Kristen and 5 different people contacting Al. Any question posed to either one of them was then communicated between the two of them.
We had a clear conduit for budget communications.
Yeah.
And some of us had to say no to keep that conduit clear. Does that make sense? It was tested.
We
Let's just
spoke
say it was
almost
tested.
every day as we got really into the budget.
know,
season.
yeah,
It was
so
tested.
I'll try
It was
can-
awesome.
Yeah.
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 I mean, communications was one part of it, but the one thing that we learned from the previous year was how nobody, I don't think, anticipated how poor the accounting was at the schools. And they did not have any idea how to even ask our questions, as opposed to just coming back and telling us how bad things were. It was as if we were being the enemy by asking questions that they didn't have answers for. And the one, I think the biggest thing is that things have gotten cleaned up a lot. I mean, have a situation where the accounting was so bad that a school, not even knowing if their bonds are being paid, not paying the teachers into their retirement accounts, so we're getting fined for that stuff. I mean, to not being paying into their health insurance and vendors calling the schools. I mean, this wasn't a lack of funds going to the system. It was the fact that they had no idea. I don't think Al or Aaron will ever be able to figure out all the details, but the situation was way worse than anybody anticipated. I don't think that's something that has been truly acknowledged by people in the town. I think a lot of social media has covered that up and not had that discussion. But I think the communication ended up helping a lot, but I think cleaning that up and realizing how bad that was and getting that cleaned up was the number one thing to making things go smoother. Because we were in a situation, if we weren't asking the questions and other people weren't asking questions, who knows what situation of the finance would have been for the schools in 3, 4, 5 years down the road if we let this go on any longer.
So do you think this coming year is gonna be even better?
I think so.
I genuinely do.
Yes.
And it's not
Yes.
our job to tell the school how to spend their money.
I know that.
It's
Yeah.
our job to understand the ramifications of not being able to meet their budgetary
Right.
needs, right? So my biggest thing was always, well, tell me what happens because I don't have the revenue. So if we're short $200,000, I need to understand the impact of that on the budget, just as I would say to the fire chief, the COA director, anybody else, tell me what the impact of is on your budget if I have to tell you cut it smaller amount, but 20 grand or 50 grand or something like that. And I think that's really why I was comfortable in moving forward with the school budget this year as it was, because I finally got the information that allowed me to understand the needs, the consequences, and the results of what we do and how that would impact the school. And I felt like in all honesty, I hadn't been able to get that level of understanding before. And I don't need the line item like super intense detail at all, but I just need to be able to say, well, this is going to have an impact over here. So what's the impact over here and how do we balance that? And that's really what our job is. And also, how do we mitigate impact to taxpayers, because that's a huge challenge as well. So it's kind of trying to balance all of those different needs and impacts. And that's really where this committee comes in making those, it's policy decision too. It's numbers, but it's also, impact on real people, and it's impact on kids, it's impact on taxpayers, it's impact on everybody. So it's balancing all those needs, which is a challenge.
And with the,
At a 10,000-foot level, if you just look at the code, the state regulations and so on, the school committee has 3 jobs they do, and one of them is the final approval on the budget. Not to necessarily to develop the budget, but final approval on the budget. And so in theory, and they assess the towns and say, this is what you must pay us, right? And then the towns say, well, we don't have money, right? But to echo what Kristen said, once the people in the town vote to approve a certain amount of money to be assessed for the schools, then you throw the money over the fence. Right? You don't have a lot of visibility. I'm going to get to this because I have a question for you. But we came off a couple of years when basically the school committee said to us, we don't have to talk to you. And so we don't have hard power, we have soft power, right? In this committee, which is the recommendations that we make to people in towns. The other complicating thing for all of us is that we have 2 towns.
right.
And we're a lot alike, but we're a little bit different. And in our differences actually have a significant impact on the school funding. For example, the median home in Boylston is less value than the median home in Berlin. The median income in Boylston is higher than the median income in Berlin. So you can see where that skews things. You can see that's problematic, yeah. So in terms of visibility, one of the things I wanted to follow up tonight, Kristen, with you is to ask Al and Aaron for the fiscal 25 excess and deficiency report and any audit letter, as soon as those are available, because they weren't available the last time that I was in the same room as Aaron, they weren't available, but that's the closeout from the previous years, and the excess and deficiency says to us, what do the schools have left over at the end of that budget year? And that's fiscal 24, which started in September, June or July 1 of 23 and ran to June 30th of 24. So that, as Scott said on the accounting, that's one of the things that is frustrating, because we don't have that most recent year's numbers, and they're supposed to be in by September. So we should have had the numbers September 24, and they've not been able to produce them. So I'm curious, when he does close out the year, that we see the excess and deficiency, and then as soon as an audit letter is available, to see that as well.
And you're talking about current fiscal year 25, or you're
No, I'm talking about
24?
24.
You're talking about 24. Okay, that's why.
Because he's there doing the competent job, we should have fiscal 25 by September. But he couldn't give us funding at 24. I asked a couple times.
We're literally in the process of finalizing our 24.
I'm just,
but you
yeah,
absolutely could ask that
the
question.
town had a one-up issue, but
Yeah.
this is 2 years running with the schools where it just, the numbers.
And I don't think we'll ever get any kind of a definitive answer as to what happened in the whole accounting process with BVRSD school district. I don't think there's ever going to be because I think there were just too many hands in it.
Right.
But
Yeah, no,
but we're
people have
definitely
People
on
experience.
the right, like the work that Al and Aaron have done already it's
So
Phenom-
the
it's
ultimate goal.
phenomenal.
To not have need an override or vote, like to come to budget pass, like that would be the ultimate goal.
Fabulous.
The ultimate, yeah.
Yes.
Cause like they said, I mean, unfortunately, the school budget is typically the most heated thing at every town meeting. I've been in,
It's the fire truck, okay?
yeah, sometimes
Okay.
it's the fire truck.
It's
and-
Defense, don't
The
forget.
community
Yes.
defense, it's a year to year.
Yeah,
But I've lived here for 30 years and the past 3 years have been heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking to see like what has gone on and to know that we're hopefully, I'm very optimistic, moving away from that.
Right.
To get back to, I don't want to say
So
the way,
just the
the way it
fact,
used to be,
Just the
but
fact.
this.
Working together.
Working
Yeah,
together.
we're working together, and I think Al and Aaron are the team
They
that
are.
can guide us to that.
Yeah, I've been very impressed. They are seasoned professionals. I'd be lying if I didn't say they have far more years in this than I do. There's a lot that I learned from them and have learned from them and will continue to do so. So I've been really impressed with both how, not just seasoned they are, but how open they've been and willing to share, with me and help me with some of the questions that I've had too, because, I'm still learning every day as well.
Just curious if I could. Be any type of.
Well, yeah, I think
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
interest both in us and in the schools is excellent,
And then
excellent.
what about like wages and benefits? When does that come to you for review?
So that comes as part of the budget on the town
Full
side. You'll get a
numbers.
full breakdown, full-time, part-time, salaries. Everything gets broken out in the budget sheets that each of the departments have to submit. They submit a packet. And then that gets uploaded onto the Google Drive, so you can literally go through it with a fine tooth comb and ask us any questions. And you can also ask the department heads questions when they come here too.
So who negotiates your benefits?
So we right now use Maya, which is Mass Interlocal, I always get it wrong, Interlocal Agency Insurance. We
Maya.
have a broker cooking company that
Mhm.
helps us. And Maya has been used by the largest number of cities and towns in Massachusetts that don't use the GIC. But Maya has offered us a relatively reasonable increase compared to what other cities and towns have been facing the past
Okay.
couple of years. So, our health insurance, while it did go up this year 12%, other
Mhm.
communities were facing 20 and up percent. So,
Schools were 18, right?
schools were 18,
Yeah.
I believe. Yep, I believe Neshoba Valley Dispatch was almost 18 as well. So we were pretty lucky at 12.
Yeah.
And it all just depends on claims for that year and how things shake out and claims go back to prior years, or is it 24 months or 36? I always
I don't
forget
know.
it. It's either 24 or 36 months. So you have to kind of wait if you have a bad year till that year falls off of your claims for your loss ratios. But we do evaluate it every year. We have an insurance advisory committee. Some years, you can do some plan redesign to kind of mitigate the impact of that rate increase. But we have a pretty good health insurance plan and usually we sort of absorb the increase rather than adjusting the plan or the deductibles too much.
And you're also, this year, we're doing the reclassification.
Yes,
Sufficient.
so we got funding from town meeting to update our FY20 classification and compensation plan. So that plan is not only now 6 years old, but it's pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So it usually it's recommended to update them every 3 to 5 years. So we're outside of that range. So we are going to be doing a salary survey and update through a consulting firm.
Yes, that was
that-
one of the
that'll be doing it.
articles, yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
So to try to see where we're at compared to other communities, as we talked about, retention, attraction,
Mhm.
Yeah, it's essential to benchmark all of those.
But it also, we look at the cost associated with the increases and how we
Yeah.
can do it in a way that, again, doesn't
Mm.
hit
And
the
what do
town.
our employees pay their percentage of health insurance?
is everybody 75 or do we have 70?
It depends on which plan you pick, because there was one that I think is 56 and 44.
Oh, if you
and
pick
Another
the
one is
super high
75 and
plan.
25, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we get an increase like 12%, you put part of that percentage into their 75% health.
The town pays that percent of increase, the employees pay that portion of the increase.
pay
Yeah,
their
it hits
portion of
both
it. Okay.
sides.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, I think that's where you'd be an asset too on the committee because you have knowledge of that.
Yep.
That kind of aspect where not necessarily everybody else. So you hopefully would be asking questions that will enlighten the rest of us too.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions.
I'm sure you will.
She's like, oh.
Yeah, like what time
She's
frame
already
is that?
starting a
Because
list.
I don't
Yeah.
want it to be November and then it's like, oh, the benefits are already locked in. We already said yes to 12%, right? Or,
Right, well, we do it in the spring. It has to be locked in by
Yeah.
April 1st
uh,
for FY 26. Yep,
So it's almost like we're always a year.
we're always a year ahead.
So that one is for
Yeah.
FY 26. So when it.
Yep.
For.
So it'll be in the spring again for FY 27. Yep.
So you'll have conversations this fall about the next fiscal year then?
Correct.
27. So it is on the reclassification, is the personnel committee involved in that?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
because we have a volunteer committee that works on that.
That is one of their main areas of oversight is the classification and compensation plan. So we'll be working with them. There is a consulting firm that we'll be working with to do the study, but obviously it'll be discussed at the personnel committee meetings and, you know, questions will flow back and forth and
And this is, if I'm recalling, that committee was formed with our first town administrator, if I'm remembering the timing of it, it was around then, or
I
no?
don't know.
With the what?
The personnel committee? Are you asking about the personnel? committee?
Yeah, was that?
Is it new?
Oh, no.
No, that's been around.
That's been around
So it
for a
didn't
very
come
long
harder.
time.
No,
The
okay.
No.
personnel committee, yeah, has been around. Well, when I joined the finance committee in 2006, I had, well, the timing of it was just at that time, the entire personnel committee had resigned in a conflict with the select board. So in the rest of the time that I was on the finance committee to 2012, there was zero personnel committee. It was
Yep.
all
Yeah.
that was done by the select board. So sometime after 2012 and before I rejoined in 21, members were reappointed to that personnel committee.
So it might have been dormant for a period of time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, it was dormant for at least 7 years.
A lot
Wow.
of communities now have the select board be the personnel committee because most of the functions are taken over by the select board as, you know, through charters or town administrator acts, because the select board is the appointing authority.
Yeah.
So it's a narrower scope after the TA Act as to what the personnel committee does.
Yes.
It's really raises classification and compensation plan and COLAs. Those are their main areas.
Job
Job description. Well, I always think of that as falling under class and comp. 'Cause
Yeah.
the job descriptions,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay.
And then what about like grants or funding from the state or anything? Like who works on that? You?
Everybody that can, me,
Okay.
other department heads, you know, I would love to be able to do it. I've got a select board member helping me right now with the
Okay.
grant. I mean, we are trying to save and find money in other ways any way we can, so.
And there's entities that assist us in a lot, like Central Mass Regional
Mhm.
Planning Commission.
Yep.
Works with our planning people and our planning board. And so there are resources to tap into regionally and statewide.
You said the planning board is where a lot of the revenue ideas.
No,
No, planning board is where like the projects will go, like people
the
who are
people
interested,
interested
in
in building
developing.
and
Yep.
developing. Will go there.
that's where they start.
That could potentially bring.
That could
us-
potentially bring, oh, I see what you're saying. That could
Right.
bring in revenue. Yep,
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think anything from the finance committee standpoint, you're really going to be involved with X directly that's, promoting bringing in additional revenue. I mean, I think those are other committees that have all various little pieces put together there, right? Because we have the Economic Development Committee. I'm not sure how much they is in what it's referred to.
economic development, Scott.
Yeah, what's the or I forget what the exact name of the committee. I've now
Economic development, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, I think it really comes down to is what economic ideas that come into the town, and then it's like how the planning goes around that. I mean, the most I've been involved with the finance committee of that is like when I was involved when Hillside Commons. Well, we have a few different developers try and come through, but Hillside Commons was one in my early days, and also the the River Bridge projects and things that were done to try and handle mitigation funds and how we can what their costs will be to the town and how to basically leverage the zoning change that they wanted that was important to them and how we could leverage that for revenue going forward. That's the most I know of. And finance committee was just one small piece of that. That was handled a lot by the select board, all the other planning boards, like the planning board was involved, and so there's various things that were involved there. But I don't know how much that goes out and able to what do you do? We have committees to look out and try and draw a business into town.
A lot of it starts with zoning and what our zoning bylaws allow and don't allow.
Which
And
takes
the-
you back to the planning.
Correct.
board.
That's where
Yeah.
your kind of nexus to the
Mhm.
planning board comes from.
Right. And of course, zoning is, well, the most controversial items you'll ever have most
Yep.
of the time on your, we all know what the zoning dealt with a few years ago when, the, marijuana legalization and, what, minimum requirements that the town had to set up that would allow people to come in if they wanted to. So the zoning is where you most, you can give up some significant rights, or you do get into more pitting neighbor against neighbor when it's impacting one part of town and not impacting another part of town. So that is where the lot of times the biggest, longest fights come from.
Absolutely, because you have, certainly folks in town that do not want any additional development. You have folks in town that do want development. You have folks in town that are kind of in the middle, like, well, maybe if we do it in strategic places, there's a whole wide range of, opinions on that,
course.
right? But one of the things, to point out that was talked a lot about during this budget cycle was new growth. And, that's because when you have minimum local contribution that can go up 5 to 6%, then you only have Prop 2.5, so we can only raise taxes 2.5 once our excess levy is gone. How do you fill that gap? New growth is a way to fill that gap, but also the state is a place to step in and fill in that gap too. If the state's going to allow MLC to continue to rise, the state should be stepping up and providing that additional funding as well. And also it's
Here,
not.
here.
Yes, yes, and it's not to the select board or the finance committee to create new growth. It's not like it doesn't grow in a tree, right? Like it's policy decisions that get made at town meeting. So that's why it's so important to go to town meeting, to stay for the whole town meeting, to really understand the broader context, because it's not, the budget doesn't happen in a vacuum. It depends on what zoning changes are being made. And if people are, want new growth and new development, well, maybe there's some tweaks, and we are going to be having major zoning changes, not major, we're going to be having zoning changes coming down the pike because we got a grant to look at our zoning and make sure it's aligned with state regulations, look at some areas where it could be potentially adjusted. But ultimately, as I always say, my favorite example, you don't want a McDonald's next to the general store with the drive-through because that would be terrible. But can you look at things you could do perhaps near the malls?
Yep.
So it's having those kinds of discussions, and those happen at like a planning board level, sometimes a select board level, but it's really more kind of planning board and then town meeting when those zoning, bylaws get pushed forward.
So I'll put it out there. My mantra is new growth is a false promise, because residential, when you increase residential population, your town expenses, it's more costly for the town. And so you're actually adding to that expense ledger, and it's a false promise on new growth. And people, say, oh, well, this will solve all of our problems. We can, it doesn't.
Right.
Mhm.
I
It
mean, more
doesn't.
commercial,
Yeah.
industrial.
Yeah,
Should
so-
have been more
so-
specific.
Right, the commercial bit is an entirely different story, but really it's,
Residential, more roads to maintain, more strain on services, EMS, police, schools,
Police.
everything,
all citizen services
Yep.
increase. And you don't make it up. It becomes more expensive for the municipality.
Yeah, there
No,
are
there's no-
unintended consequences of
Yeah.
development.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no
I know.
silver bullet.
All
Easy
the
answer.
unintended
I live on the
consequences.
street, I know the unintended consequences too.
We have light pollution. There isn't a night that it's dark.
That's right.
Because of the highway.
Mhm.
Because most of the lighting is in Hudson. They don't have light bulb regulations like we do.
That's my friend Karen Brown. That was the dome over at Solomon Pond.
Yeah.
Because she lives on River Road and she fought for light and noise.
And we used to live
barrier.
on a street that nobody traveled, and it's a highway now.
Mhm.
So we know about unintended consequences.
And they're costly.
They are.
They're costly. But I mean, they're costly in terms of how people live, but they're costly in terms of what we do in this committee. So it doesn't,
Hmm.
uh,
Have you gotten your questions answered?
yeah.
Yes, I have.
Oh, and then some.
I want to make sure that you
Yes,
do.
no, I came with my.
Will you come back, please?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, the last thing you probably just wanted to mention, I mean, obviously is the appointment process. Of course, the main appointing person for this is, of course, the town moderator, which is Barry Ager. The ideal thing is being able to get a hold of him. After that, there's two other processes. One is which we utilized 2 years ago in the October timeframe, when after a position was vacant for 60 days, the Finance Committee, after first contacting the town administrator, I'm sorry, the moderator, that there's been a position open for 60 days. We haven't actually done that communication ourselves yet this time. Once we contact the moderator about that and he hasn't reappointed anybody, then the board itself, the Finance Committee board, can actually appoint somebody. And we also learned through just last week that through the Town Administrator Act, that once a position is open 90 days, which is also hit the 90-day mark, the town administrator can recommend and the select board can actually appoint a member to the Finance Committee. So those are the three avenues through that process. And like I say, right now, in order for Finance Committee to take a step, we'd have to first have notification to the moderator, even though he knows that somebody's already gone, but we would need to go through that step before we could actually take a vote.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay.
I think.
I-
Time.
I
Yeah,
personally
thank you for
do
coming.
hope that you move forward. I
Yeah.
think you'd be a great fit. I enjoy volunteering. I find it enriching in a way to now know how the behind the scenes of running a town works. I don't feel like it's been an overwhelming commitment.
Okay.
And again, like we said in the beginning, if you have something personal, something with because obviously your career is first priority.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's always, especially where we would then have a full committee.
We just need three
The-
people for a
yeah,
quorum to do
the-
things like we did
The,
tonight.
the
but,
meetings, the
it's-
meetings can take place,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially, we understand people have children,
Yes.
people have spouses, people have families, people have careers.
And-
Thank you. That's-
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yes,
And,
help
and
me.
Yeah.
the schedule is, the open seat is, right now is a 1 year.
Yes,
So you can give it a try,
which I
right?
like, yes.
Didn't I work that on you, Cliff? Didn't I say just one?
Yeah, I
1
would
year?
like to. remind
Re-
everyone.
Remember this, you are not locked into any position. So, I mean, even if you're appointed into a position that had 3 years remaining, I mean, you can always resign. You're not, you have not signed up and are forever stuck there. You can always leave. Just meant that nobody can take you off the committee until your time, your appointment is up. But you're not locked in.
Yeah, no, it's
Some
flexible.
type of impact or have some type
Yeah,
of,
no,
you know.
You're
Yeah.
clearly able to do that.
uh,
Clearly.
And I would personally want to thank you for coming here tonight and
Yeah.
talking with us. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you very
Let me-
much. for
let me
your time
echo-
And answering my questions.
Yeah,
You know,
let me
I-
echo
I-
him.
I'm, but-
Yeah,
It's
I
almost
Just gonna
9.
say, yeah, this is.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
we get on a roll sometimes.
No, I appreciate you sharing everything, being as transparent, as honest about what it could look like.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate it because I'm always encouraging people to get up and be a citizen, do civic duty, right?
Yes.
Do these things because don't leave a void there. And this seat opened because Julie really got into her artwork and it was too many conflicts and she just really wanted to do, but she
I met
was
her last year.
great.
She was
Oh, you met her,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's,
Yeah.
she was, I miss her,
Yeah.
I miss her in the.
Yeah, she
next-
decided that was a more important part of her life and felt that it was unfair.
So we don't get
you know,
mad at
kinda
you
to
if these
us,
things come up,
so.
right?
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. I
It's
thought
fine.
it was fine.
All right, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Hope to see you again soon,
I will let you know. I'll be in touch with
Barry.
Barry.
Yeah,
Great.
and if it's slow, you can reach out to me and I can help.
Well, thank
Because-
you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Because the man does take my phone calls.
Oh, he does?
Eventually. Yes, he does.
Ah,
We've emailed a few times, no luck, but we'll
Oh,
get it. Hey.
yes, well, then maybe
Yeah.
I just ought to nudge him.
What?
If you give us,
There you go.
if you give us your personal green light, I'll nudge him.
I will let Kristen know.
Okay,
Thank you.
Can I sleep on it?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I
yeah,
have to.
Absolutely.
Definitely need to think about it.
Yes, I need to. It's one thing to read something online and read what
Mhm.
you do but hearing from all of you and the perspective and the commitment. I
Yeah.
just wanna
no
make sure.
homework, no.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was.
Homework.
Yeah. Remember, you have a lot of, you have a lot of experienced people on the committee, and having the experienced people, having new people come in as
Mhm.
you got the experienced people. The worst scenario would be to have, 3 or 4 people suddenly resign and then bringing all new people in and losing the experience.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
makes a life a lot easier. It transitions people. You're not expected to be knowing everything, and you have people to learn from.
I didn't ask, did you have any more questions for me?
Oh, no, we exhausted you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
We
you.
can always get you later. so.
Okay. I'll have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming in.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Good night.
So, what do we have to do? Any other open
Motion to
items?
adjourn.
I just have
Oh.
one more
The-
question. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
Is it at all possible for us to schedule another meeting? If we need it?
Like a hold, like.
And if we need it,
Yeah,
need it.
because like right now we have a meeting scheduled, I believe, for the 9th
9th
of
of
July.
Correct. Yeah, we want to, that was one of my other items, was to talk about, because last time we were trying to just talk about June, but there was too much, people knew they had issues in June, but not enough clarity. So basically, no, I would think probably somewhere around the 18th or the 25th
June or
be-
July?
of June. June.
Oh, okay.
Scott, I've got no Wednesdays available in June, okay?
Okay, so, and because just to have
Yeah.
something on paper, we don't have to have it being a Wednesday. So is there any week or day of the week that anybody would be more available in, say, look at the 3rd or 4th week of June? Let's look at the 3rd week of June, the week of the 16th. Is anybody definitely not available at all the week of the 16th?
Just to throw this out there too, is that if we need to do line item transfers, we need both your signature as well as the select board signature. And right now, I believe the select board, their next meeting, I think, was the 2nd. But after that, I think it's on the 16th. So even if it was one of those where I don't know if anybody would be available for the select board meeting, maybe on the 16th, in case we had to do a line item transfer, it would just be that one.
What day of the week is the 16th?
A
Monday.
Yeah. I could make it work.
Yeah.
16th is okay.
And we don't have to have it, just because the select board meets earlier, doesn't mean we have to be earlier. I mean, we can just indicate whatever time slot would make sense for us. So, I mean, early could be fine if that's fine for everybody, but if somebody says we can't do anything till 8, that's fine too. So is the 16th available?
Yes.
Works for
Yeah.
me.
Yes,
So this is a
Okay.
tentative meeting if needed, right?
Yes, I'll schedule it. So 16th, at what time do you want? You want to put the usual time? I know the select board goes a little earlier. I think they start at 6:30. So would you want earlier, or would you want our usual time, or Yeah.
June, you would take papers to them first and us second,
We could do that, yes,
or either other way.
however is better for you, because right now that's gonna be the last, on the 16th is the last time anybody's meeting before the last payroll of the year, which is the 30th.
Okay, and they meet at 6:30.
Yes.
And Scott, you probably have the most limited schedule. You and Heidi are the ones.
Since my job change,
Your evenings are more
my
flexible.
evenings are a little more flexible.
I mean, with any luck, we won't need you and we can cancel it.
Yeah.
It's just,
Right, and it's,
That's 7.
Bump
yeah,
it to 7.
you want to do
7.
7 o'clock? I mean, we can just put something on paper now and we can, as long as we know, so 7 o'clock on Monday, the 16th?
Yes.
Okay, I will schedule that. And again, there'll be, if something comes up or we don't need it, June will let us know if there's nothing.
yep,
And otherwise, then the next one after that is the 9th. Again, we could go as late as the 15th, but I think the 15th would be the following Tuesday. So we'll keep it as the 9th and hopefully we don't have to go that deep into July.
yeah, I
Or-
believe as of right now, the select board is not meeting on the 14th, so. Technically,
Okay.
the 7th and the 9th may be the end of their,
But otherwise, then we'd have to go through the reserve fund. That's the only, what we can do
Yep.
without the select board.
correct. I
Okay.
appreciate, it. Thank you.
And we'll schedule that.
Yeah. And I had a question for Kristen. I can move to adjourn if you guys want to do that, but I have.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
let's
Seems like
do
she needed
that.
to take care of
I need to
I was gonna
drive
say
home.
she has an urgent matter she's taking care of right now, so.
Okay, well, I'll run that question later then. Okay, motion to adjourn. Anybody opposed?
I seconded. I am not opposed.
Oh. You know, in favor?
I, so at
9:32.
9:32.
There we go.
I told my wife it would be a short meeting.
Yeah.
She knows better than to believe that though, Scott.
Yeah, I have a 40-minute drive to get home. All right. Great,
I
see ya.
forgot you weren't home.
It's a good time of night for traffic.
Yes,
Lack
well, maybe until I find out there's road construction.
Oh, yeah, right.
We are in
Yeah.
that season. Okay, good night.
Thank
All
you,
right, good night,
Scott.
Scott.
Nice to hear you.
I am
Coming out of the
still
sky.
live right now, because I'm not sure on which one I have to shut down.
Just pull the plug.
I know, I was just thinking that. All right, let's see.
So I won't have the minutes to you all till I actually see the transfers so I can get the language correct.
Okay.
So it may be a few days. before you
Uh,
get them.
I won't complain. Not even to the
Hopefully we
management,
won't
not to
need a
you.
July meeting because I will not be here during that time frame.
Well, and you're having fun and I'm out of town. I'm
Roger,
having fun too.
how do I shut this down? It's been so long since I did this,
Just keep hitting the X in the corner.
but does that log us off?
Yeah, I think so.
Because she has two
Oh,
things.
Roger hears us struggling. He's coming to the
He's gonna
rescue.
help.
Here's our cheat sheet.
But she's also got me on YouTube, right?
Mhm.
That I know.
Wait a minute. I think
Can I
it's-
just shut off the computer?
Pull the battery out.
Mm.
I remember I had trouble with something one time. I ended up doing that.
I can honestly say I've probably done that.
Out the,
But will
Pull the
that,
battery
Pull
out.
the battery out.
I
Yeah.
thought there was a way you can log off, like,
Yeah.
Well,
isn't there a way to?
Okay,
Thank you, Cliff,
what?
for scribing.
Mhm.
Yeah. You can see I'm not ready for the chair role. I'm really, I need more training.
So you're a CIT,
CIT. Chief in training.
chair in training.
Chair in training, chair in training.
CITs is what they call the teenagers at summer camp that are too old to be a camper, but too young to be an actual counselor. They call them CITs, counselor in training.
Counselor in training, that's cute. I want to know, maybe one of you remembers?
Probably I won't.
No, hang on, because it's quirky, you might. The 1870 town hall got rented out to the people making the movie. What are they paying us? Anybody know what they're paying us?
I don't know.
That's what, that's my question for Kristen.
Kristen would know.
Yeah, you'd have to get that from Kristen. I don't know
Yeah.
what that is either.
And that was question one. And question two is where's the money going? Is it going into the revolving fund for the 1870? That question
Kristen
was
could
asked.
answer those questions.
Yes, I gotta
Yes.
track her down. I don't know what she's up to, but
I don't know what you do.
Oh,
She
not
got
that
a
way. I
girl
gotta
call
find
her a
YouTube.
text message that
she had to hustle out.
something urgent.
Oh, oh.
Is that through Zoom?
Oh my goodness.
Did we?
40, 50 years ago,
Anybody for all this time?
my mother sat in most years.
Oh.
Oh, gee.